We're bringing in the dynamic duo. We have Richard Stiennon and Dan Lohrmann, longtime friends of mine, two cybersecurity experts. And gosh, I don't know where to start. There's always so much stuff we can cover. But Richard actually covered this about a month ago, and Dan just wrote a column about it. As we all know, there's something going on in the Ukraine. We're just not exactly sure what's going to happen. But one of the theories is that that Tsar Putin and his troops, one of the things they might do is unleash some cybersecurity shenanigans on the U.S. So why don't we start off with that, since great. It's the biggest news out there right now.
Yeah, and I think Dan shares my reluctance to even talk about it, right? Because if you're in the cybersecurity space, you get criticized for crying that the sky is falling and accused of being a Chicken Little. However, we have precedents, right? We've got the attacks on Estonia in 2007 and the attacks on the country of Georgia and South Ossetia in 2008. And during those, there were cyber attacks. Now, they were, for the time, they might have been serious, but they were mostly defacement and DDoS attacks. The one in Georgia, I think, is interesting. I covered it closely, and you guys probably remember this, but, the DDoS attacks were against, businesses in Georgia and the government websites and the newspapers and the television stations. And it just so happened that there was a woman visiting from Atlanta, Georgia, not to confuse you, all the way back to home in Tbilisi, Georgia, and when all this was going on. And she ran a hosting provider, ISP, in Atlanta, Georgia. So she said, hey, I can help you out with that DDoS attack. We are just going to repoint all of your website domains to our hosting provider in Atlanta. That led immediately to the entire ISP being taken down by the DDoS attacks, and hundreds, if not thousands, of US companies' websites were DDoSed. So it's kind of a inadvertent collateral damage. And that's, I'm thinking, there's two levels to this. Dan probably has got a lot of thoughts on it. But certainly there'll be the collateral damage, the fallout from massive attacks, right? If Russia really wanted to hurt things, they'd pull another NotPetya, which was devastating, the most damaging cyber attack in history. Billions and billions of dollars in measurable losses to businesses around the world. So something like that could easily happen. Most likely, of course, is they're going to target, websites and power grids and communications infrastructure within Ukraine, but that will spill over, right? It's hard. We all know geolocation isn't an exact science. Things move around. And that could have, they could take out internet routers, that could have spillover effects to the entire internet, but not really things you can, tell people, hey, do this, this, and this. So Dan can, I read your write-up, Dan. There's a lot of people writing about this. And I'm trying to look for advice that makes this scenario different from any scenario, right? I mean, it's like everybody's suggesting things that you should do anyways.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I want to preface my thoughts, Mike, with, as always, Richard gives great points. I don't know whether Russia's going to go in or not to Ukraine. I mean, I'd say Dan Lohrmann, 50-50. I have no idea. Interesting this morning, just some headlines out of the London Times saying that Russia welcomes Ukraine's offer to suspend NATO bid. So I preface all of this with I hope and believe that you kind of hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So all of this is based on preparing for the worst. The reason I wrote the article I did, and thank you for posting it on MITech News, is that it's a job of CISOs, of security professionals, of technology professionals to have different scenarios, to be ready for fire, flood, tornado, natural disasters, any business, and then be ready for a scenario. And some people view this, I don't want to call it the worst case scenario, but one of the worst case scenarios, and that we need to be ready should that happen. And I think, I said a couple of little points that I just thought of and read this morning, even on this topic on CNBC, a lot of news covering this all over the world. CyberArk CEO came out and said nation state cyber attacks can provide like an air cover for a lot of the cyber criminals that are doing things underneath. And so, just the fear of all of this, everyone's focusing on that. We certainly need to be doing all the basic things anyway, and watching all of our sensors, and anybody watching the networks needs to be taking these steps anyway. But there are a list, and we can go through the list in a minute, of things that CISA has come out and said. NSA, CISA, FBI, a lot of the agencies, NSA came out with a lot of joint communiques. CISA came out with alerts over the weekend, telling people kind of alert status. Everyone, all eyes, should be on this. That at any time, you can say, well, shouldn't you be doing that anyway? Well, yeah, I mean, you should always be ready for a fire, but when fire alarms start going off, it's a little different. You're starting to activate, you're starting to actually execute certain things. And I can walk through a list of some of the CISA recommendations here in a moment, but I do think that this is an extra special alert. And, we had a whole alert system in the past. With Homeland Security, we had, and I don't know how successful it was, yellow and orange and red. And, when you were red, level red, it meant different things at the airport than if you were yellow. And so, I mean, I do think there are steps that organizations can take that they might not normally take, in a normal situation. And I think, should there be an invasion, I totally agree with Richard that if this attack does happen, and I know people say fear mongering, I don't want to be fear-mongering, but I just want people to be prepared. I thought it was like my duty to write this article, because I do think that, people need to know that this is a higher level. It's like, we prepare for the snowstorm that's coming. You say, well, I'm going to do everything the same minute. Maybe not. Maybe you're not going to go out tonight. Maybe you're going to stay in. I mean, maybe there's things you need to be doing and prioritizing in these organizations around the country at a bank, or, different levels of intelligence, different levels of who you're going to listen to, being ready for different actions. For state and local governments, I work with a lot. I said in there, work with the MS-ISAC, the multi-state ISAC, work with the REN ISAC. If you're a university, you need to be working with these groups and looking for these things.
All right, yeah. So please go through that list of recommendations you were talking about.
So, I'm going to run through this real fast, Richard. You can comment on it, but this is from this is CISA.gov. You can go out there and look at the alert name. It's alert AA22-0440A is the name of it, and it's again, I mentioned this in the blog that I published. But so some of the mitigations that they recommend: keep all operating systems and software up to date. As Richard said, that should be done anyway. But if you use RDP or other potentially risky services, secure and monitor them closely. Implement a user training program and phishing exercises to raise awareness. Again, something that most of these things people may already be doing. Require multi-factor authentication on all critical systems and in most systems. Require all accounts and password logins. That includes service accounts, admin accounts, domain accounts to have strong, unique passwords. If using Linux, use a Linux security module, and some details on how to do that. Protect cloud storage by backing up multiple locations, requiring MFA for access and encrypting data to the cloud. Then they go through another whole laundry list of I'll just run through these quickly. Segment networks, implement end-to-end encryption, identify, detect, and investigate abnormal activity and potential traversal of indicated ransomware with a network monitoring tool, document external remote connections, implement time-based access for privileged accounts, reduce credential exposure, enforce principles of least privilege through authorization policies, disable unneeded command line utilities, three more, maintain offline backups of data, regularly test those backups, ensure all backup data is encrypted, and collect telemetry from cloud environments. Again, there's some of these things, and the details on how to do those things are all listed. But again, these are just a checklist of items that they encourage everyone to follow.
Man, yeah. you almost put me to sleep, man.
That's all right.
Breaking news, by the way, at 2:03 p.m., CNN reported the United States is closing its embassy in Kyiv and temporarily relocating a small number of remaining people to Lviv, or I don't know what that's called. Leave. Yeah, it's probably leave. Yeah. Which is pretty funny. They're leaving Kyiv for leave. Okay. But yeah, so apparently that's another signal that the State Department at least thinks an attack is imminent. So,
and the president of Ukraine is called, I think, for tonight. He's going to address the nation. The supposition is that the invasion is going to happen on the 16th now, so it's just Wednesday. So yeah, so I was like trying to reach for my book, which is a collection of essays.
I've got a book too here.
Yeah, from the time I started blogging 2005 to 2008, I made all those recommendations, except for the one, monitor your cloud resources, because I didn't know what that was at the time. It didn't exist. And the command line utility thing, that's a new one. Never heard anybody say that before. Good advice, though. So, it's same old, same old. Now, so let's look at the next scenario, because the U.S. has been just doubling down on its threats of drastic responses, right? Which could go all the way up to seizing the assets of oligarchs, and which would really get Putin where it hurts.
Well, the Brits are saying that too. The Brits said there's a lot of
definitely
oligarchs in London, and that's the first target they'd go after, right?
Yep, and I don't believe the Brits will ever do it, because their entire economy is based on stolen funds from Russia. So, but if the U.S. does that, then the U.S. will see repercussions, even if they're just the hackers getting mad because it's, hey, Putin will support us, so we're going to start messing around with people and launching the things that we've been preparing all this time. So it could get dicey. We probably, if it might not even be newsworthy, because when there's a shooting war going on, there's a lot more to keep people occupied.
Well, I think, Richard, though, it's probably a bad analogy, but I do think the one thing that the alert does do, and I agree with you, the list is not, at least the unclassified list that you and I are reading at the website for CISA, which is a Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security, for those who don't know that. The list is not surprising. But there are classified lists. There are other lists that are eyes only. Most people out there have access to those, lists. I would just say, and I hate to compare it to Pearl Harbor, but one thing I do think is significant is, one of the big things, I've watched that movie so many times, different versions of Pearl Harbor, and it was a surprise, and the one thing to say out there clearly to everybody, don't be surprised. I mean, be awake, be alert, get your team in place. And you're right. You say, well, we already should have been doing these 27 things. I don't disagree with that, but not everybody does all those 27 things all the time. And for better or for worse, we all supposed to change the oil in our car too, but we don't do that. Now, I'm not saying that's the same as this, but I mean, my point is, there are things that people need to redouble down on. And I do think the alert does raise awareness. And I do think people need to be prepared. And I do know that there are organizations, things we can't talk about in the show, that are taking steps that go well beyond this list and that are classified, and that that are upping the ante, if you will, in their cyber defenses.
Yep.
Go ahead, tell us, Dan. Who would we tell? Come on, So
just us kids.
I could get in trouble. I'm sure those FBI agents that are watching.
That's it.
Ready to pounce, and I can't talk.
Yeah, I don't think orange is your color. So
no. So yeah, it's nobody knows what's going to happen, but everybody seems to be pointing to Wednesday. And the other question then being is, how are the Chinese going to react to this during their Olympics? This will take everybody's attention off the Olympics, clearly, and put it on the Russians. So I was expecting at least they'd wait till after the Olympics to do it, but who knows?
Yeah, and I've heard of the, okay, Richard, jump in. I've heard the 20th too. So I've seen the 16th as well, Richard. I've also heard the 20th, so that maybe they will wait an extra 4 days. So I think, we'll see. Sorry.
Yeah, the one thing I saw CISA say, and it wasn't in the notice that you just read us, it was just, a quote, but they said, prepare your incident response procedures, which is something that not everybody does and is super critical to have, regardless of how lax you are in your hygiene and your security. You will be surprised, you will get hacked. Even the best organizations get hacked. You should know the first step. You know, the CEO should know who to get on the phone. The CISO should know how to pull his or her team together quickly. Each of the team members should know what their actions are going to be, because in a time of crisis, just like when you do a fire drill in your house, you all agreed to meet by the tree in the front, right? And Joe's going to get the cat and somebody else will get the dog, and and that's just so common sense to do. And right now what you do, just as I do every fall, I start to think, what's this winter going to be like? Do I have enough firewood in case the power's out? What do I, is my generator going to work? Things like that. You do the exact same thing, but imagine, for, the people who are just computer users listening to the show, what are you going to do if you don't have internet access for 3 or 4 days? Kind of plan around that. Can you do something productive? Can you make sure you've got phone numbers of people that you only email so that you can call them up? Of course, phone systems might be down as well, so maybe you're going to take a vacation, but if that happens, there'll be runs on groceries as well, because people won't know what's going on. If the power goes out, are you ready for that? Leave your laptop plugged in all the time. You get, for me, 2 hours, but some laptops you get 8 hours of power. Have a battery backup on things that you need. Just start planning like that. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be ready and know what you're going to do.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Richard, I remember during Y2K, kind of dates me, but everyone said, the Red Cross, all the different the emergency coordination groups around the country all said, all of us are supposed to be able to survive without 72 hours of power, to have a food kit, to have and the checklist of all the things we're all supposed to have as families is, well, again, you could say, well, we already have that anyway. Well, some people do, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't. I don't know how they would survive for 72 hours without electricity. And again, I'm not trying to scare people and when you say that, it's like Dan's saying that the power's going to go out for 3 days. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's a standard checklist that's been out there for 40 years or more. It's just that a lot of people ignore it.
Yeah.
We had Simon Whitelock on the show, 2 weeks ago, Matt? 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And he's the president of ITC Michigan. And I've toured their control center. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it too. It's the size of a football field. And I said, I mentioned Richard. I said, one of the things that they're suggesting is that the soft target would be to go after the grid and break it down. They go, man, we're dealing with that all the time. Whether it's state sponsored or just crazy hackers or whoever. And he didn't seem to be all that concerned about it. He thought that in ITCs that they don't generate the power, but they're the big transmission lines that link everybody. And then the utilities do the last mile kind of stuff. But he said, I think we're as prepared as we possibly can be, because one of the things I think Richard and both Dan mentioned was obviously you want to bring down the grid because that would do the most damage, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, from what he said, they learned quite a lot from that 2003 outage in the summertime that we all remember.
Yep.
And, they learned sort of how to contain the damage, where they might be able to stop a small outage from being a really big one,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, those cascading effects just revealed a lot of vulnerabilities in how they, were controlling everything with Solaris systems, and they just needed to ramp up their design, I guess, their architecture.
Yeah.
It's good to have reminders of that, and glad it was in the summer, right, where we just have to deal with no air conditioning.
And now we have to deal with freezing our butts off, right?
I was going to say, that was a hot and sweaty night, and not in a good way. We were all living without AC in one of the hottest nights of the year.
Yeah.
So, but right now would be particularly problematic, because at my house this morning it was like 7 degrees.
Yeah.
So
Same here.
Yeah. So what else is should scare the pants off us these days? What are the latest threats you guys are aware of?
Well,
Richard, you
Michael-
mentioned the Cyber Safety Review Board. Did
Yeah.
you want- Okay.
Yeah, after years and years of discussion, I was quite happy to see in the executive order that came out last May that they were going to establish a Cyber Safety Review Board. So we're all familiar with the National Transportation Safety Review Board, the NTSB. We see them in the movies, and they come in whenever there's a large air crash, and they come in and spend months and months and months. And they finally come back and tell us if it was pilot error, an airline that didn't operate, whatever. So we get the answer, and then we can feel comfortable flying again. And so the call was for something like that would be an official summary of major cyber attacks, because there's always, and everybody's got their own theories. Journalists get all over it, and they find different stuff from different sources, but a lot of it is conjecture, and not from Dan or I, of course.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but you might remember the famous attack on Sony Entertainment, right? There were insiders there, and then people at a squirrely security company that said this was all insider attacks. You can't attribute it to North Korea, and they kind of all got egg on their face when the Obama administration did attribute it to North Korea attacking Sony Entertainment for that silly movie that Sony Entertainment produced, I guess. So, but it's a devastating attack, right? It took a year for that large organization to recover from the attack. And we never did have an official accounting for what happened, right? You can piece together a story. And when the executive order was published in May, they said, anytime that this other committee is convened to investigate an attack, that will cause the Cyber Safety Review Board to be pulled together. And the other committee is made up out of National Security Council, FBI, NSA supporting with intelligence, of course, and CISA. The Cyber Safety Review Board now has got named members. Quite a few of them I know, and I'm sure Dan does, and I respect them tremendously. The one bone of contention I have is that they have been convened in order to address a vulnerability that occurred, just at the end of the year.
Log4j.
The Log4j vulnerability in the Java library.
Yep.
And I'm scratching my head. I mean, what are they going to do? Go back and find the guy who uploaded the code 15 years ago? When I can tell you what the report will say. 15 years ago, somebody added this code, and it's been sitting there for 15 years and got distributed everywhere, and it's vulnerable, and now we have to patch it. That's not a cyber attack. That's a vulnerability. We don't need a Cyber Safety Review Board to review vulnerabilities unless you think differently, Dan.
No, I agree with that. And I'm wondering what really is going to come out of this. And I want to be respectful, because I agree it's a good step. And it looks like a great list of people. Our friend Chris DeRusha right here in Michigan's on the board, Rob Joyce, Katie Massaris. I mean, a lot of really great names. Tony Sager's a good friend. I mean, there's a lot of great people on this board. Reviewing, the Cyber Safety Review Board, I mean, the board you described for airline, crashes totally makes sense. They said that we always hear they're sending the team, they're looking for the black box, they're finding out what happened. Yep. Doesn't seem like that's what this group's going to be doing, because first of all, you've got, I mean, just in real life, practically speaking, that maybe they're going to have subgroups. I don't know how they're going to organize this. The first thing that's out there that's very controversial is it going to be mandated that people are going to have to report all attacks, all ransomware attacks? And there's a lot of people that say they don't want to do that. We still think, we look at the numbers. We had record numbers last year in 21 of ransomware attacks. By all measures, data breaches were up, everything, but the question is, how many don't we even know about, Mike and Matt? I mean, how many attacks are never reported? Right. And so the first thing is, when there's an attack, do we even know about it? But is it mandated Is it going to be reported? And who's actually going to go out and do that research on these attacks? It doesn't seem to me, Richard, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, that this group of people is going to go do that. I mean, these are senior level executives, you know, for major corporations and high level government officials. I don't know exactly what this team is going to do for, and then we're talking hundreds, maybe, you know, probably thousands of ransomware attacks per year. Is that going to be under this? I mean, exactly how that's going to work, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you know, it's a great team for creating a policy or proposing legislation or new laws or regulations. Those guys, all of them have the background to hash out a good compromise on how to do it. But investigations, within CISA and certainly within the FBI, and they can also reach out to industry. They can do investigations.
Sure.
But there could be 100 people involved in investigating the attack they should be worried about, which is SolarWinds, because we don't have that complete story. If only they would just tell us that complete story,
Well, that's the thing about the NTSB. They send 4 people to the site of the plane crash. They sift through the wreckage. They take evidence, physical evidence, back to a lab. They analyze it. And then 6 months or 8 months or 10 months later, they issue a report. Now, is that going to be the methodology here? Do we know that?
You would think you'd hire a Mandiant or a team from Mandiant. I think Kevin Mandio was originally going to be on the board. I didn't see if he actually was.
His name doesn't look like it's not the list that's out there right now at DHS.gov. I don't see Kevin.
Maybe he opted out so that they can call in his company and there won't be a conflict. But that's the kind of response that, we usually get pretty good reports from Mandiant when they go in, or CrowdStrike in the Democratic Committee's servers case. And they give kind of the final report that everybody accepts. Everybody's rational. And I don't see it now. Maybe the next step is to build an agency behind them, right?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I want to see where this is going to go. I love the idea. It's like so many things. It's like, spring training, my team's going to win the World Series. I mean, it always looks good in spring training, and we'll see. Let's see if you win the World Series or not, the Tigers. We'll find out. Of course, now they're having a strike, so they probably won't be playing for a while. But I think it's a great concept. I agree with you, Richard. I'm waiting for the implementation.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're coming down to the end of the segment. Any final thoughts from either of you?
Well, I'll just say real quick, I'm with I've shared this last time I was on, but I'm with Presidio now. I'm Field CISO, Field Chief Information Security Officer, working with public sector. So my role has changed from where it was. A lot of times I've been on the show when I was with Security Mentor, but enjoying that a lot, and just really interesting spring coming up, I think, for all of us to see what happens with the whole events in the Middle East and also in Russia and Ukraine.
So I take it you mean interesting in the Chinese curse sense of the word.
Yeah.
Hey,
your own scenario planning should be, no vacations, because you'll be called on deck with all of your customers.
Could be.
All I have to worry about is calls from Al Jazeera, who loves to call me up whenever there's an incident.
Good.
And the M2 TechCast, of course.
Of course,
right.
yes. And we should be ranked above Al Jazeera, right? So, okay, good to know. All right, Richard. And so, Richard, as a disclaimer, him and I wrote a cybersecurity novella. Gosh, it's been 11 years. We kept saying we're going to do a sequel. Maybe it's time, right? Anyway, so I've known Richard a long time. Dan, of course, is the former CISO, at the state of Michigan. And that was a long time ago. 8 years now, Dan, I guess?
Almost 7.5 years.
7.5. Okay, cool. And they both have books. Go ahead, plug your books. So
I was going to say Cyber May Day and the day after, Leader's Guide to Preparing, Managing, and Recovering from Inevitable Business Disruptions, out with Wiley, came out in November, and it's available at Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Okay. And Richard, you have
and you have your yearbook out now, or
yes.
almost, right?
So,
almost.
Yeah, so I'm actually reviewing the proofs this week, and it should be available in print by May 25th.
Nice.
I have one of your older ones that you sent me. I haven't had a chance to go through it all yet, but very informative. So, what a
data in there.
value, right? Be
Yeah.
a fool not to get that book, right, Richard?
Absolutely.
So, I know. Can't
Just in
have
time
that.
for RSA.
All right, so Dan's at Presidio, and then Richard, you're at IT Harvest. Anything you want to add, either of you, about how to reach out to talk to you guys, or other than Al Jazeera, Richard? I mean, who else do you talk to? Or
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and just search my name, Stiennon.
Same with me. At GovCSO on Twitter, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Happy to talk.